Hello learners, welcome to e-learning portal. I am Varun Kumar Mishra, Associate Professor of English, Rajdhani College, University of Delhi. Today I will be discussing with you how to report an experiment. As we know, science is evolving constantly. Studies in scientific research are carried out to add to the general and technological knowledge about us, our world, and everything that the human world could explore about the mysteries of our universe and beyond. So, the constant evolution of science across different disciplines has different dimensions to explore. This exploration of facts and ideas about the human and the material world is reported and recorded in order to establish newly discovered knowledge, for establishing its uniqueness and preservation also. The reports of scientific explorations and research are reported through the experiments that are carried out to conduct the scientific research. The experimental reports are such documents or piece of writing that helps us in recording the result or the outcome of experiments. The experiments are essential component of any scientific inquiry. Therefore, experimental reports are the foundations upon which the entire study is dependent. In this segment, we will discuss about the process and method of reporting a scientific experiment. In your course of study, you carry out some experiment to find out the result of one or the other kind of assumption that you begin with. The result is available with you in the form of data, figure, or change in material, organic, or in any other form. You have to summarize it in the order in which the change has taken place. Now you need to know here the ways and methods of developing your report of the experiment. Before going into developing the obtained data that you think you have acquired after you comprehended the background of your study and its design into conclusions about a scientific process in the form of a report, you should be considering the fact that you share a familiar consciousness and knowledge system along with your teacher and the reader you expect your research to read. This also raises the question that why are you writing this research paper? As people who investigate some scientific hypothesis have a responsibility of to report their findings to the greater community so that you either add up to the previous knowledge or contradict it. Therefore, your job as a writer of scientific report is to delineate the information presented and search for legitimacy of your research. The legitimacy and authenticity of your report depend upon the fact that how well you have adhered to the format of writing an experimental research. So we propose here a basic format that the scientists have developed and have accepted quite widely. So it may have an introduction, then next is it discusses about methods and materials, then the third is the results, and the later part or the final section of it is discussion. This format may vary depending upon the area of scientific research. Generally, the scientific methods involve developing a hypothesis, testing it, and deciding whether your findings support the hypothesis. So, in the introduction section, you state your hypothesis and you further explain how you derived that hypothesis and how it is connected to any previous research, and here you mention the purpose of your experiment or study. And in the next section, when we talk about the methods, so you in this section you provide details about the way you have tested your hypothesis, and you clarify why have you performed your study in that particular way. So how it makes it unique in itself. In the results section, you provide raw data that is collected perhaps and express the data maybe in the form of a table, figure, graph, or in percentages or in ratios. However, some in a form which is comprehensible, which is readable to the reader, whosoever is reading to those datas and figures. So when you come to the final section, you here have to consider primarily whether the data that you have obtained, it supports the hypothesis or not. That is very significant part. And next step is to explore the implications that your findings suggests, and then from there you may come up with some kind of a judgment or some kind of a suggestion about this particular experiment, experimental design, or maybe the study that you have taken place. So in that case, if you have attempted or tried to study something, and in this section you come along with what you have thought of studying and what are the findings or the results of your study. So the method that we suggested here, it helps us in successfully compiling the report and also fulfills expectations of the readers that are about to read this research further. Some researchers, for the sake of research, design, and there may be an area that change. So maybe you design one kind of a research in one way and the other kind of research in the other way. But the elements that I have suggested here, or that the scientists suggest, or the format that is suggested just before, the order of this format may change, but the elements of this format shall continue to be there at one or the other place in different designs of research. So we further need to ensure the fact that you know about the experiment sufficiently enough that you will write about it comfortably without getting confused about the procedures and techniques, and will not come out with an ambiguous piece of writing. You must know and state the fact that You are about to learn from the experiment and what you are going to establish through this particular experiment. Hence, you need to consider the question of ways, methods, expectations, and benefits of that particular experiment. A consideration to these questions will help you in drawing a fair picture about your research and experiment. So, this so far has been the design of the research, but the things or the facts that helps us in conducting our research conveniently and designing our report coherently, we need to look for other factors. So one very significant factor is a consultation with your seniors and supervisor itself add up to your convenience and will make your job really very easy. So next thing is restraint. So it is said that restraint is key to success. Hence, never rush for things. Wait and watch. With time, you may find accuracy in your findings. If you can design a table to account for the data, that will work much better than just jotting down results in a hurriedly manner on a scrap or piece of paper here or there. So the greater need is to record the data carefully, and as you begin to write your report, your experimental report, you must you, you must be having a title for your research, because you think about an area, you think about a topic, so you may use it as your topic, and then you begin with the introduction of it. So in this introduction section, you write about the purpose of the research and then the relevant literature that you are going to use in support of your experiment, in support of your research. Here again you put the hypothesis in a very bold and clear terms, because your hypothesis is the core of your entire study, and your belief about the viability of your selection for the research. So you think of something, you move ahead with that thought, you try to give it a material shape. So this is how you hypothesize your entire experiment or entire research. And in the next section, there should be a sound purpose for your research. Your research must originate or emanate from logical and reasonable principles and should definitely be learning centric. So, and as hypothesis is central, so it plays the central role in writing a good research paper. The ambiguity and confusion that we encounter in our course of experiment and research by not sticking to a fair plan often result in disaster. So a well-planned hypothesis helps in such situations and prevents us from deviating from our course of research and yields greater results. You need to come with strong arguments and evidences in favor of your hypothesis. It should be strong enough so that nobody can challenge it without any sound and solid scientific reason. A devoted background or previous research shall help you to diversify and develop your hypothesis very well. there is a slight difference there between the authors or teachers and the students. I mean to say, the students who are learning things anew must have a different level of understanding of the subject as compared to the teachers or senior researchers. So the teachers and senior researchers would know things more and would know the background better than the students. So the students' knowledge about the previous literature will not be as sound as that of a teacher. So teachers assume that the background literature of the similar kind of research may well be within the knowledge of the audience, hence they keep writing about it. But the student who write about such things should consider and must write the background in such a clear manner that their further experiment and finding gets established and gets established well with the background, introduction, methodology and findings. So there it should look like an organic whole where things are organized properly and it has a beginning, a middle and an end kind of feeling should come from your report. In the next section of your report, you write the expectations of the readers to take into account the way you have considered your methods to carry out the research. So you think about a particular method of carrying out your research or conducting the experiment. As we are discussing about the methods and materials, the methods that you choose for your work should suit to the design and objective of your research. So the research or your experiment has a definite or a particular design, and the method that you choose to conduct or carry out your research must cohere well with the hypothetical expectations and procedures that are required to accomplish your job. While describing and writing about your method, you should take care of the fact that the methods that you mention in compiling your experiment and its findings should exactly be duplicated by other who wish to carry out the same in future. So you carried out your experiment in XYZ manner through 3 to 4 different stages, and you have come to one kind of a finding. Now you must take care of the fact that when you repeat the same method, same procedure, the results should also remain the same when you do it again. A result once produced shall be obtained similarly for endless number of times if the material and method is similar. So this is very particular. And then as we move further, we need to be careful about the rationale that you use, and you have enough reasons to defend yourself. The next thing is the structure and style of your report must take into consideration the fact that you are writing your report for an audience, not for yourself. Hence, understanding about the experimental procedures and related results will be achieved by the readers only when your report is organized well. The report, depending upon its nature, must take into account the fact to put information in a diversified manner to achieve the maximum clarity in understanding. The division into sections and subsections helps both the writer and reader equally. So if it is divided likewise into sections through headings and subsections, further through subheadings, then it helps us in locating any particular information quite easily, and one will not have to go through the entire report to, if one wants to know any particular set of information. And while writing, one should use the narrative structure according to the demand of the result, and the report shall make it readable and comprehensible. Remember that you are describing what happened, so you should use past tense to refer to everything you did during the experiment. And uh, although people are tempted to use the imperative because that is how maybe the lab manuals probably are worded, and they frequently use the present tense. So instead, remember that you are talking about an event which happened at a particular time in the past and which has already ended by the time you start writing. So simple past tense will be appropriate in this section. And further, it is advised to use passive voice in which the subject of a sentence or clause doesn't perform the action described by the verb instead of active voice or first person. So as we approach to write the result, we encounter the paradox that the shortest section of the report is most important section. A result is the soul of your experimental report. Here you not only write about your findings only, you also write about the success of your research. It is here you complete a long journey of envisioning your research idea, collection and study of material, carrying out experiments in light of method and hypothesis, and then the final result. So it is here kind of, you see that how your journey gets accomplished, your journey gets completed. So your journey of experiment will have its final touches here. Since this section is direct outcome of what you have carried out and you report facts here, so avoid anything that might be ambiguous or may be disputed by your readers. Depending upon the requirements, you may use texts, table, figure, graph while writing your report, but your final section must be so strong that it legitimizes your efforts with a solid solution to the problem that you have raised in your hypothesis. Thus, the final discussion should be strong enough. You should always establish the fact that the data that you have used supports your hypothesis. And you must acknowledge the anomalies and deviations from what you propose in your hypothesis and what you have received. Because what happens once you are into the business, once you have started your experiment and research, you discover newer things. You discover things different from what you have originally planned or you have originally conceived. So now, based on your experience of this research or of how things have surfaced up, how things have come up in a new manner, in a new fashion, and your research and your findings and your own studied data, you derive a conclusion and relate it with what you have proposed and what has come up finally. So you need to be very careful here about this deviation or slight change from the original one thing. If it is a very slight change, then maybe the supervisor or your teacher may allow you to go ahead with it. If it is not affecting the result, or if it is not affecting the hypothesis in a major way, then it may achieve the permission of your teacher or supervisor. So an exploration here again of theoretical and practical implications of your findings establishes your research well within the domain that you have planned to study. So you begin with your experiment, you come with your result, and you provide it theoretical and practical background, so it is very well established as your legitimate study of the area. And next thing which is very significant here is to mention the literature that you have consulted in the form of reference and bibliography, because it helps the future researchers in carrying out their research in the same field of study. Let's discuss a little about laboratory tests or experiment, and it is not limited to any particular field. They can be carried out in a number of fields, from physical sciences to medical science to biological sciences to many different areas of science and technology, and entire research and development depends upon such small scientific techniques and scientific uses. So you as being a student of science, one will have to perform so many experiments in the laboratories. These experiments will demand from you the ability to choose suitable equipment to arrange various instruments appropriately, to observe and record the readings and reactions, and to arrive at right conclusions. So this is how we see that the laboratory is quite useful, and we have instruments, we need ourselves to familiarize there with them, and finally you write the reports that you have performed there, the experiment that you have performed there, and you conduct an experiment and you report it through your findings and conclusions. So hope we have discussed at length how to design and develop an experiment or an experimental study. So when we go in the lab, we are provided with predefined materials or equipments, and we have a problem there, and that problem has a theory associated with that problem, as I was discussing the same thing earlier. So the theory explains the problem, and this explanation is to be proved there. So, and this also is looked as how we formulate a hypothesis. So, and it is always advised to never to conduct an experiment without having any clear idea of what is to be tested, how it is to be tested, and how am I going to do it. So basically we have a very clear idea about the problem and its hypothesis and the ways in which we will carry it out to confirm the research or confirm the experiment. So we need to know or ask certain things before conducting our experiment. So the first thing is, why am I carrying out this experiment? So will it help me in finding an answer to the problem? And then when you analyze the problem, when you carry out the research, you analyze it in the simple words, and now you can segregate the problem into different parts and may provide answers accordingly. So there may be different answer for different sections of your research, but it should always be in consonance with what the theoretical assumption or the theoretical hypothesis raises there. So experimentation is observation that is carried out in specific conditions, and in an experiment there are events that occur under certain conditions, may be known or unknown. So you need to eliminate the influences of whatsoever kind that comes from the outside, and you have to ignore them, and you observe the interrelationship between different facts. And it is important also to decide that the selective sample that you have taken, it covers the entire field, or at least it covers what it is proposed in the introduction of your research or introduction of your experiment. And you should arrange all the equipments and apparatuses carefully and follow the entire procedure to conduct and carry out the experiment. And I hope once you do all these things, once you carry things out in an ordered and disciplined way, you will come up with a very good experiment, very good result, and will write this experiment wonderfully. Thank you very much.